presentation on your spring bulbs, on how you can begin to extend your bloom and tips and tricks. And I can really think of no one better to talk about bulbs in this area than my wonderful and beautiful wife, Adrienne Roethling.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. There's not much I'd rather do on a nice day like today, but I'm certainly proud to be here and speaking to you all. I haven't been over to Ronaldo in a little bit over a week or so, so I need to come visit. But it's great having this relationship, obviously with Ronaldo Gardens, but then we share our resources too. So whenever I get a phone call, hey, so-and-so has got plants for us, I always say, well, you got to include my husband. And they're like, oh yeah, no problem. So whether it's bulbs, hellebores, or trees and shrubs, we partner together, thank goodness. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And we are going to, yes, talk about bulbs today. And just so you know, I'm going to start a lecture series. I mean, we have a lecture series here at Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden, but I'm starting a series called the Best of series. And so I'm going to eventually do a best of bulbs. And then next April, April, I'm going to do a best of perennials talk. So hope you don't mind me throwing that in there too. So if people miss this one or they want to see it again, it's certainly something that I will continue to add on as time goes. So the first thing I want to do is talk about Brent and Becky, and I'm also going to talk first about the beyond portion of bulbs. Yeah, you got your tulips and daffodils, but I'm going to knock out some of the other stuff right away. But here they are, and this is always them. Becky pets her plants, and I'm surprised that Brent can still get down on the ground. I know my knees have really taken a beating, but this man, he puts anything to shame because he can just do this. This is at the Greensboro Arboretum, and he's taking a picture of a daffodil. So he takes pictures for his catalogs. So he really knows how to get to them. But they're the best couple. So nice, generous, obviously. So beyond tulips and daffodils are these cute little guys, and I don't have any muscarias. We didn't get any muscarias this year, but I do have muscarias scattered throughout the entire garden. This one has somewhat of a fuzzy kind of appearance to it. It doesn't have your typical straw bells, but we certainly do have muscaries, little grape hyacinths with the little straw bells, and we have these in our scattered throughout the rest of the garden. So yeah, we do our main display of tulips and daffodils in the pattern garden, and then anything that I discover that is a really great perennial bulb here, which is most of them, few tulips, probably 3 or 4 years. I'll talk about some of the better tulips to grow year after year, but these other bulbs do get permanent homes in our garden. We try to recycle as much as we can, and I can get into that a little bit later. So yeah, trying to dig up a bunch of bulbs and going back to identify these little muscarias can be quite of a challenge, or it's actually kind of easy because they're small, but we reuse a lot of our own bulbs. We do have a fair amount of crocus throughout the gardens. It's another bulb they didn't have left over at Brent and Becky's bulbs. These are always the early bulbs to bloom. These are blooming sometimes in February in mild winters. Now, we had a mild winter. However, we were still at least 10 days behind. I mean, the red buds are just now starting to bloom for us. Usually they're in bloom like sometime in middle of March. So they're even behind. So everything's a little bit behind now. So the crocus actually probably would have been about done by now. And then there's this wonderful little yellow bulb called Iphion. It's in the onion family. It doesn't really give off an odor like onions. Some Iphions do. This one does not. When we went to Plant Delights Nursery, he had a really nice mass of this thing. This is a small yellow, obviously, as you can see, looks like a crocus, has foliage like a crocus, and it blooms early. It blooms in like beginning of March for us. This year, it probably would have been more like mid-March. Now, I have noticed that our bulbs have overcrowded, so I need to go in and divide them up. What's really cool is Brent Heath came to visit and he did a lecture for us during this time of year. He saw this in bloom. He didn't even know what it was. That was so cool. So I've since then given him divisions of it, and he's added it to his collections, and I believe he's going to start offering it in his catalog soon. So that was a great experience, giving something back to somebody who's been doing bulbs his whole life. Obviously he know Iphion, but he didn't know this particular species. So this is the Iphions that truly do smell oniony. These, and also these can kind of get around a little bit. You might see a little seedling here and there, or if you go in there and disturb the roots, the bulbs break off, and you might find them in other areas of the garden. But typically, because they're pungent, they're pretty resistant to critters. I hope that's the case. Whenever I say that, somebody always says, nope, they eat mine. So there's not an official ruling, I would say. But there is this nice kind of purple pink form, mauvey pink, and then there's this gray stone, and then there is a blue one called Iphion Fiegler. I think I have it in the gardens, but I don't think I have a photo. No, I'm sorry, I don't have a photo. These blooming right now. They have little white star-shaped flowers, pink, mauve, purple, and they bloom for a really long time, believe it or not. They stay low, so you want to put them at the edge of your beds, and they like full sun. Then they go completely dormant, probably in another month. You won't even know they're there. So I know there might be some of you in there that are probably like, Adrienne, I can't believe you put this in your lecture. Well, I've been putting these little ranunculus ficarias in my lecture now for 13 years, and we have been pushing it as a great little perennial bulb and a non-invasive variety. And this year, after 13 years, this year, I got blasted for showing off these plants. So I'm going to keep them in my talk. I will still grow them in my garden. I will never give it away, because the species Ranunculus ficaria is, and it's actually a new name. I forget what the new name is. It's not ranunculus, but they have discovered that the straight species, just Ranunculus ficaria, is a runner. It spreads. And if you've been to the Greensboro Bog Garden, you know how much of a hassle it is. Flora plana has double flowers. It does not produce seed. So you won't have little seedlings. There really isn't much to go on to disturb it and break up the roots. There isn't much to share, if you will. So you're looking at these little individual clumps that stay these little individual clumps. Now, I did have somebody say, well, if you've grown this plant for 13 years, you don't know what it's going to do in year 14. Yeah, okay, that's valid. I get it. But like I said, I will never give this plant away. I do want to talk about it because I want to show you that regardless of the species, there are varieties that have been selected over the years that are not invasive, but I completely understand that some people might still have that fear, and that's completely understandable. And then there's this one. This is the brazen hussy. So this is the mother plant. There's that looks like a seedling, that looks like a seedling, and that looks like a seedling. That's it. That's all I've noticed in the last 13 years. Well, actually, this goes back to Plant Delights days. This is 20 years. But again, no one's going to know what's happened in 21 years, but it's not going to happen. This stays nice, stays contained. Now, this one I have in my perennial border, and it's growing underneath a deciduous shrub. So it will get sun in the summer months and it'll shade it out. And actually, that's fine because it'll go completely dormant. This photo is taken at Plant Delights Nursery. However, mine is in the cactus gardens. So it's in full sun, no water, and it's pretty much hot and dry. So it doesn't have room to escape at all. If anything, a car is going to hit it and destroy it before anything else happens to it. Arum italicum is a plant that actually gives, and it keeps on giving. Talk about a weed. You know, nobody wants to go and fuss over this plant. But Arum italicum, or Italian arum, it's in the aroid family. It looks like a peace lily. It gives you a show for 6 months out of the year. So from November, it's going to start looking like this. And it'll continue to look like this until this happens. This is in April. So you get these flowers, and if the flowers are pollinated, then what will follow is spikes of seeds. Now, if you did not want it, cut the stems off and discard it, throw it in the trash pile. Trash, not compost pile, throw it in your trash because it will come up in your compost pile. Birds don't really mess with it much. They might eat it and carry the seed somewhere else. Humans, of course, like to grab it, which I don't advise. I would advise grabbing this only if you wear gloves, because it's got acid in the seeds. And if you handle the seeds, especially if you have a cut or an open wound, you will burn. But this is a great plant that grows very well all throughout the winter and early spring. And then in May, it starts to go dormant. I wanted to show off this little guy. This is cardamom, or it's related to bittercress, that little weedy, problematic lawn weed that you see that pops every time you walk past it. However, this one's very tame and well-mannered. I have not had seedlings on it. It has spread just a little bit, but only within that 5 feet by 5 feet area. Blooms early. Here it is complementing our dark purple hellebores that we got from Pine Knot Farms, and it'll go completely dormant here soon. It's called cardamom quinquefolia because it's got foliage of roughly 5 leaves, which is where it gets its quinquefolia name. But it's pretty. Even when we went to Plant Delight's nursery, we saw some really attractive cardamons. I forget some other common names for them. Dentaria is another name. I don't know what's the new name anymore. I hate when taxonomists mess up our horticultural endeavors. But anyway, this is a great little perennial to have. I got this from our friends Edith Edelman, who helped design this perennial border. I've lost sight of this one. This was a scilla. It's actually a scilla that has these wonderful like mop heads of blue flowers, big mop heads, kind of allium-like, but more flat. And it flowers a little bit later in the season. So it's a nice scilla, and it's big too. I mean, the foliage is really thick, about an inch wide, and it gets about 12 inches tall. And then you have these wonderful umbels of blue flowers. And I want to say I lost sight of them because they got overcrowded. So they can easily get overcrowded, and you really need good drainage to grow these. And you see them, it's hit or miss when you see them through Brett and Becky's bulbs, but I believe they just had them. So hopefully they'll keep a running stock of these things. The Spanish hyacinths were another pass along plant from our friends, Wyatt Lefevre, who has a garden just up the road. You can barely make them out, but there's some pink in there, there's some blue, and then there's a white form. So you get 3 different colors on these Spanish hyacinths. And what's really nice is they bloom after your hellebores, they bloom after your crocus, and they bloom right about the time that tulips start coming along. So it's a good complement to those. They're young, small, they're delicate. They don't make a very large mass. They just kind of come up here and there. They're really pretty. I really like Spanish hyacinths. I like them. They're more reliable than I think our regular hyacinths. I feel like our regular hyacinths that you grow, those oriental types, tend to just decline over the years, but not these guys. And then Camassia is a 4-foot tall flowering spike of blue or white star-shaped flowers, and they start at the bottom and they continue to work their way up. These are great perennials for us. So these are flowering just after your tulips and daffodils, right around the time that some of your late alliums start to come up. We have these scattered throughout the gardens, and they're great perennials that keep coming year after year. And all these bulbs that I've mentioned so far are ones that you pretty much want to plant in the fall. I think with the exception of the scilla, that big blue scilla, you might have to plant early in the season. What's great about Brent and Becky's is you can start ordering these bulbs now, and they'll ship them to you at the appropriate season. And then Fertilaria is in full bloom right now. This is a plant that, you know, there's so many wonderful species. You probably have seen the crown imperials. You've probably seen the little checker box ones. I have struggled with all of those except for this one here. It's hard to see. Oh, you can see it right here in the middle. It has these little hooks, if you will. So it does need something, like it's growing next to this barberry. So it probably needs to grab onto something to be upright, because in those heavy thunderstorms we had last week, they would have completely flopped over. But it's got these wonderful white checker box like flowers. They hang upside down. They are perennial, and they do come back well for us year after year. And they actually start flowering and doing their thing in early March. They're in full flower right now here in our gardens. And then they quickly go dormant. They disappear before you even get a chance to realize what had happened to them. So they go completely dormant the rest of the year. This one I have been growing for a couple of years. It was behind the bench in the pattern garden. I got 3 or 4 years out of it, and I've lost sight of it because of either overcrowding or just who knows what else. But it's one that's worth trying if you are interested in trying a persicaria that, or the fertilaria that might give you 3 or 4 years. This is certainly worth it. You only get 1 year out of the crown imperials. You only get 1 or 2 years out of the little checker box, but this is second best, I think, to that first one I just mentioned, Fertilaria verticillata. We have these, they look like giant asparagus coming out of the gardens right now. We have them in our pattern garden, and some of them are starting to flower. Some of them are coming along. They're really neat. We got tons of them. I don't know if John managed to get some, but you did. Okay, good. This is going to be really cool to see. I can't wait to see them all. We've got hundreds of them out there. And I'm going to keep these as perennials. I'm going to see if they survive from year to year. I've had some luck with these types of buttercups, these ranunculus. These are like your florist type that you see in stores. I did plant some plants in late winter one year, and they survived and came through until spring. And then, of course, I lost them. So I don't know if they're going to have the hardiness potential that some of the others do, but it's certainly worth trying. And of course, once you find them, they flower around Easter. So by the time you see them in a florist market or in the grocery stores, you could try planting them, but I don't think they would actually survive. I don't know if it's the heat or the cold or both. Great florist plant though. Wonderful florist plant. So again, later in the season, like I'm talking May or June, this is another plant that I like stumped the chump, if you will. So Tony Avent came to visit our gardens. He was doing the talk for us, and he came across this little blue flower, purplish blue, and he's like, "What onion is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's not an onion. It's this plant called Dichelostemma." Of course, we know Dichelostemma. There's other species of this. It's a really weird common name, ukao. I don't know why they gave it that name, but it has multiplied in our gardens. I have since then given Tony pieces, although I think he's purchased some because now it's in his garden, but a great other stump the chump kind of plant. And so this plant has really grown to a nice size, a nice clump, reliable flowers every year. They're not an onion at all. It has very thin foliage. Flowers come up at least 12 to 18 inches tall. And if you notice, it's in our scree bed. So it gets good drainage and lots of sun and lots of heat, and it does very well for us. Much later in the summer, of course, there's all your lilies and other glads, but I didn't really want to get into those because those are so common, and maybe someday I'll add them to my best of series, but I'm skipping all that great summer bulbs, and I'm going into kind of your late summer bulbs. But I wanted to show off these radiata types. We typically see the red radiata, but there's this one in the middle, and I forget the name of the one in the middle. It might be actually another species close to it. There's this one down in the bottom middle, and it's got hints of pink in it. And then the one on the left is called Fire Truck. So it gives you a little bit more like of a double kind of look, if you will. But I like these Lycoris. I like these better than this particular straight species, this red one. I like the red one too, don't get me wrong, but to have something different in your gardens is amazing. And then, you know, some of these others, Haywardii, Springeri, some of these others, Chinensis, Rosea, I forget what some of the others are, but I love the surprise lilies, hurricane lilies, naked ladies, whatever you want to call them, just put them in your garden. And when you have an opportunity to share them with your friends, please do so. Sometimes they can be fussy. This one at the bottom on the left, the Chinensis, I get 1 flower a year. The bulbs are there. Great foliage, but I get 1 flower a year. I don't know if I have to go in and kind of lift them up and divide them. I don't think that's necessarily the case with that one, but they're kind of temperamental. They do their own thing. And then they also call them surprise lilies because you forget they're there, and then boom, all of a sudden there they are. No foliage, just flowers, and they last a couple weeks, and then they're done, and then the foliage comes up. The foliage is out in the garden right now. Hibranthus is one of those rain lily relatives. What I like about the Hibranthus is the flowers face out or up, whereas the Zephyranthes, they face out like a trumpet, whereas the Zephyranthes face up like a lily. And they're both rain lilies, and they both respond well after a rain. Hibranthus have some of them have larger pink flowers. And then there's this little one. I haven't seen this little one in years. Hibranthus texensis, I think. Tony Avent had it, and it's makes a nice little colony, but gosh, I haven't seen it. I like the Zephyranthes because, like I said, they bloom after a rain. This is one called, the name is escaping me. Over here, this is one called Yolkster, like egg yolk, and it's extremely prolific. I absolutely love it. It's right next to the parking lot. it's practically buried by this shore juniper, but it still comes up in mass. And then of course, whatever this one was, I forgot, does very well for us too. And then over the years, thanks to Tony Avent and then a friend of his who's recently, well, not recently, but he passed away in Indonesia, would actually breed some of these things. So really cool. And I hope we get to see some of his new ones that he's marketed before he passed away so soon. Fall blooming colchicums are fall blooming colchicums. Don't call them crocus because they're not. I learned the hard way. But here they are flowering with actually a type of rain lily that's given us one last round of flowers before that one's done. But colchicums mostly come in shades of that purple, pink color, white. They have two double flowers, single flowers, big flowers. They come up only like 6 inches tall. The flowers will go and then the foliage comes up after that. And the foliage is really nice and thick. These are ones that you have to plant early in the season because they flower in like October, November. So if you purchase these, they will ship them to you in like August, get them in the ground. And they're huge bulbs. They're like 6 inches across. And you would think you'd have to plant them so deep, but you don't. Just plant them a few inches in the ground. These are your fall blooming crocus, your sativus, your speciosa. They do have these little pink purple flowers, and then the foliage is small like a crocus, but these are your fall blooming crocus, not to be confused with the fall blooming colchicums. Right now, we're seeing just a little bit of the cyclamens that are finishing flowering for us. This is cyclamen heterophyllum that also came from our friends Wyatt Lefevre up the road. We actually went to visit his garden one day, and he's got this lawn path in through his woodland garden. And actually he's starting to put Ophiopogon in his lawn so he can do a no-mow garden. But over the years, these cyclamens have seeded in his lawn. And so in the beginning, it was like people are mowing over these cyclamen seedlings, or you're walking on these cyclamen seedlings. So I just went into his garden. I said, I'm just going to dig out cyclamen seedlings from your paths so that they can actually grow and do their thing. So we did that. We got about 600 plants. We counted them off. I mean, little teeny tiny bulbs. So they're in our gardens. Heterophyllum blooms in fall for about 3 months. And they call it heterophyllum because it looks like an English ivy leaf. And then you got this cyclamen coum, and it's got this kind of heart-shaped leaf. So I kind of make it look like a C, the letter C. So cyclamen coum kind of does like a sideways C, if you will. So that's how I tell them apart. But anyway, also you could tell them apart by flowers, because heterophyllum flowers in fall for 3 months, coum flowers in winter and spring for 3 months. So you can get 6 months of just cyclamen foliage, cyclamen blooms. Foliage does tend to go dormant in the summer months. The seeds, when the flowers are pollinated, the seed heads form, and it makes a nice seed about the size of your thumbnail. And then that seed will kind of drop, and then you can have these little seedlings scatter throughout. We actually have a guy who blows the property, and when he blows on either side of this path, he's blowing the seeds further down. So now we have a nice alley of cyclamens, if you will. Okay, let's get into tulips and daffodils. And I think I'm doing good for time because this is going to take a little bit of time. When I was a student at law, posters in our classrooms of all the different divisions of daffodils and tulips, I had no idea they were all grouped in certain divisions. So I'm going to run through. I just have a few samples of each of these. There might be, I think I have examples of these. There's one tulip I don't have an example of, and I'll tell you why. But we're going to start with daffodils. They typically have a trump. They have a trumpet, excuse me. They have a trumpet, and then they have a surface of flowers behind that. Sometimes they face up, sometimes they face down. Sometimes those trumpets are split. Sometimes those trumpets are doubles. Sometimes the trumpets are different color from the petals. So they're really cool stuff. So we're gonna, I just want to show you this different sizes in tulips too, in daffodils as well. So you got these little miniature ones to these very large ones. Really cool to kind of put these in comparison. But we're gonna start with the trumpets. The trumpets are, they flower middle of the season. So that little M that you see at the top of the screen means mid. For us, it means they probably will bloom. Well, our mids actually are a full bloom right now. We have Barrenwind, which is a early flowering one, flower early to mid, but those are tete-a-tetes in there, and tete-a-tetes flower early too. So some of these daffodils can flower early to mid season. And so for us, it's like end of March, beginning of April. So the trumpets are one flower per stem, and the cup is longer than the petals. You might be able to see that, but I don't have a side view of that. Here's some more. You can definitely tell that this was a large trumpet. Sometimes the petals are recurved like this. Oh, I'm in large cup. Let me go back to trumpet. I guess I only have these few examples of the trumpets. Okay, now we're in large cups. Sometimes the cup is a little bit more open face. Sometimes it's a little bit more closed face. What's interesting is not all large cups mean that the cups are large, and I'll get into that too. But it's one flower per stem. And the trumpet is 1/3, but less than equal of the petals. I don't know how much that means to you, but that's the version of what a large cup is. So sometimes they're closed, sometimes they're a little bit more open. They flower early to mid. So we're looking at late March, early April. This one, see, the trumpet is not as large as like this one. So when you think of large cup, you would think of that large trumpet, but it's not always the case. Garden Club of America is an old timey one. It's one of the favorites because it's got kind of like a halo of orange around its trumpet. Pink Charm has a little bit of white center. Riot and then Monel, these have all been in our gardens. What's interesting is look how wide open that cup is on Riot. They're early to mid. Again, Monel flowers really early for us. And then Salome and Avalon, just some really interesting forms out there. Carlton already flowered for us. Carlton reminds me a lot of February Gold. There's just a slight little difference. February Gold flowers really early, and then Carlton comes right behind it. And then I haven't seen this one called Barbie Doll in years. We had one vision of that, and I think we ended up moving that to a permanent area of the gardens. I'll have to go out there and see if it's in full flower. And this one flowers a little bit later in the season. So whereas this one's going to flower in March, April, this one's going to be more like mid to late April. Small cup, again, you would think a small cup is a smaller trumpet, and in some cases it is, but you saw how large the large cup sizes were, or small the large cup sizes were too. So small cup is one flower per stem, and then of course is the trumpet is no more than 1/3 of the length of the petals. So it's shorter, might be larger, but it's shorter. I do like Barrett Browning. That center glows, and I really like it paired with Muscari. So you know this is going to flower early. More small cups. I love this green. This one has a really nice white, fades to yellow. Look, and not all small cups flower at the same size. So you have this Barrett Browning flowers early. Then you have this one that flowers late, and this one right in the middle. Your doubles are just that. They're doubles. They don't form a true trumpet. They have a clustered cup is what they call it. So it's all clustered. So the cup and the petals almost blend together. So here we see the My Story and Bridal Crown. Bridal Crown has multiple flowers per stem, and it has a nice cluster of little tiny flowers. So it's really sturdy too. It's upright. It'll hold up very well. This is a single flower form, but nice doubles. This one, I like this one because it looks like it's got like a little halo around it. And then of course, here's another one very similar to Bridal Crown, maybe just a little different color in the center. I love these species. This is a species where the flowers are smaller. They usually have one or more flowers per stem. The heads droop, and the cup is, the petals are often reflexed. So this is Hawera. John and I actually love Hawera. It's one of our favorite ones. This nice, soft yellow flower only gets about 6 to 8 inches tall, flowers early. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if they're almost done right now. John did a really great pairing of putting that through a ground cover, the Veronica. In some cases, you can get away with putting these bulbs in certain ground covers, and they make a nice little kind of a carpet for them. More triandrous, all those flowers are reflex. It's like somebody took a hairdryer to them. And then, which I was surprised that February Gold is grouped into this Cyclominius, but Division 6 is 1 flower per stem. The petals are reflexed, and the trumpet goes straight out. So I would think it would be a trumpet, but it's actually not. It's a Cyclominius. But this flowers early. I've seen this where it flowers as early as January and sometimes as late as March, just depending on the winter. Here's more of your Cyclominius types, also with really recurved petals. And they stay short. There are shorter plants out there. We have jet fires blooming out in the garden right now too. And they do have a nice orange cup with that soft yellow petal. So a lot of people like to call all daffodils jonquils, but they're not. Jonquil is a type of division. So not all daffodils are jonquils, but all jonquils are daffodils. So there's one called fruit cup and baby boomer. And jonquils have several flowers per stem. They're usually fragrant. And the stem is cross-section. Don't worry about that. Foliage is often very thin and narrow, almost like a rush. Here's this nice open cup on this one. So again, different sizes cups. So I guess you'd have to look at the foliage to see that it's actually a jonquilla. And then here it is paired with Lady Jane. These are actually out in our front door area. So they haven't started flowering yet, but they will soon. More jonquillas, Pipit and Hillstar. There's not much difference in there. You can just barely make out just the difference in the halo around the cup with just a little bit of darker color to it. I can't keep all these straight. I don't know why people do this. This one has a really interesting cup. The cup's kind of split open, but it's kind of not. So Bahama Beach is kind of a neat one. This one flowers a little bit later for us. Tazetta has a very strong stem and has multiple flowers, usually 3 to 20 flowers per stem. The flowers are sweetly fragrant. They have a very short cup, and the petals are often rounded, somewhat crinkled. Absolutely fits it to a T. This one, holy crap, this one is teeny tiny. This one's only like 3 inches tall. It's really cool. I missed the flowering season on this one. It only flowered for like, I don't know, a week. It has multiplied so much that I have to go in and divide it, but it's a teeny tiny plant. I really like this. And in case anybody wanted to know how to pronounce it, it's caniculatus. I knew I was going to get stumped on it. Caniculatus. More Tazettas. I like the pairings. Okay, so this is a one that I don't have a flower of because there's only a few that actually represent this division, Poeticus. There's like 2. We have had it in years past. I failed to get a photo, but in this photo, I tried to give you an idea of what the shape would look like, but what the color looks like. So imagine this color of this cup on this small cup here and small flowers. So these are not Poeticus, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what Poeticus looks like. Poeticus is a very rare one. So if you can get a hold of it, that is great. These bulbicodiums flower really early for us. I've seen these flowering as early as December sometimes. So these are great rock garden plants. And they are good, they need good drainage. More bulbicodiums, golden bells. Golden bells are a dime a dozen. You can get them really dirt cheap. And they have those big cups with those little flowers. Bulbicodium, small flowers resembling a hoop petticoat. Division 11 is two categories. You got the split cup, and then you have the papillion, it's called. I'll show you that in a second. So split cup just looks like somebody took a knife, spread that cup open. I like Sovereign. Electris is flowering for us right now out in the gardens with that Valerie Finis Mascaris. And this is your split cup. It's almost like you just have these thin petals like a star. Miscellaneous group are the ones that don't really have a category. They consist of daffodils not failing into previous categories, but many are different hybrids of such. So tete-a-tete is in full bloom rate for us right now. I actually ordered about 3,000 tete-a-tetes because I wanted this whole garden to be all tete-a-tetes at once. Well, the beds closest to the trees line where there's deciduous trees, those haven't come out yet, but the ones up against the wall are all coming out. So I didn't time that very well, but it's all right. I guess I could have planted the shadier ones first and then the second, but I didn't. And they stay small. Then you get into some of your species. Again, they're usually hybridized, or they're wild, or they're naturalized. So I've seen a lot of this flora plana out in the gardens, just here and there. Sometimes you find these on old homesteads. Some of these other species, this one's in full bloom for us right now. It's actually almost done. Oh, I already showed tete-a-tetes. Well, there's another one. Okay, now we're going to get into tulips. And the Rembrandts, number 9, they don't exist anymore, so I have no photos of that one. And I just went out to the gardens this morning because I did not have a single early flowering form until today. So this is one called Apricot Beauty. Like I said, this photo was taken about an hour ago because I wanted to represent this division. It's single early, so everything in here is going to be a single petal, flowers early. So these are now just coming into full bloom. And here are those tete-a-tetes around it. Another one that I went out and got, because I only had one flower form of this photo of this form, this double early, so you know it's going to be early. These are out in our gardens right now. Again, another photo that I took this morning. Marie Jo, double yellow flowers. And these buds are fat. They're extremely fat. I really like seeing these. And then here's Orca. This is another double early flower form. I've had this one in the gardens in the past. I don't necessarily think it's got as many double petals as this one does, but it's got bluer foliage and it stays a lot smaller. And I like that kind of red hint around the border of the petals too. But if you want to see these doubles, you need to come this week. And the cold weather that we're going to get is not going to hurt these whatsoever. Triumph is single, mid to late spring for its flowering season, that is. And that's about it. What I like about some of these Triumphs is you get this color blend in one flower. So this one flowers early to mid. Shirley is one of my favorites. It just looks like sorbet, raspberry sorbet, Graceland. And then some of these other two-tone forms that are out there. I love them. Division 4 is the Darwin hybrids. Those are going to be some of your largest forms. Darwins are large, mid to late spring flowering. So we're looking at April, end of March, early April. They have lots of contrasting eyes and penciling. So the centers are going to be different, and then the outer portions of the flowers are going to be different, but Darwin hybrids are usually the most common. Now, I've heard Darwins do very well in the South. I've had intermediate hit or miss with these, so I'd expect at least 3 or 4 years out of them, but they're the most common and they're usually the most readily available. Daydream, Big Chief was huge. If you can ever get a hold of Big Chief, that's great. They've discontinued some of it. Some places have discontinued it because there's been a disease that's hit them. It doesn't affect the gardens once they get out, but it's usually something in the buyer's side. So you see it, it's discontinued. There's another one out there that I don't have a photo of. It's called Sky High Scarlet. It's probably one of the largest ones, but Big Chief is the second, I think, as far as size and height. Big open flowers. They open on sunny days, they close at night and on rainy days. Godoshnik has got a mind of its own. The flowers are either going to be all yellow, all orange, all red, or it's going to be a combination of the three. It's going to be streaked. It's going to be striped. It's really a nice one. There's even a double Godoshnik now too. There's like a whole series called Appledorn series. They're in there. The single late is a single with late flowering, mid to late spring. Sometimes, wait, where am I? Division 5. Late spring, sometimes 18 to 30 inches tall. And you can see some of the cultivars. There's more flowers per stem on some of these cultivars, like Antoinette has got like 5 or 6 flowers per stem. The lily flowered, I really like this. It's kind of got like this hourglass shape in the petals, and then the petals come to a point. Lily flowers are goblet shaped and they bloom mid to late summer with often reflexed petals. So when they open up, they look like a star. So more late flowerings. The lily flowers have been really great perennials for us. This ballade or ballade, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. This has been in our gardens since the beginning, 2009. So it's still coming strong. Fringed is simply that. It looks like the petals have eyelashes. Fringed are usually single, although this one looks like a double. And they flower from mid to late spring. So Queensland is out there. I forget. So we have some of the other ones out there. We have a white one out there that's got fringed. I forget the name. Viridiflora. Viridis means green. So a lot of times you see the stem bleeding into the petals, and that's exactly what that is. That's kind of an extension of the stem that actually grows into the petals. So you get that little bit of hint of green through it. Late flowering. That's about it. That's all I can tell you on that one. I like the green ones. They're really a great plant to have in the gardens. Like I said, number 9, Rembrandt, it doesn't exist anymore. I don't know why they even keep it as a division. They've all been succumbed to viruses and there's none left, unfortunately. So the parrots are these very large, almost kind of like a Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors bud that comes out. And when it opens up, it's these wonderful bright colors. There's this 2-tone, almost 3-tone, because it's got a little bit of green in it. There's I forget some of the other parrots, but there's a whole series of parrots. White parrot, okay. I should have known that. And they flower late for us. Flaming parrot is a good one. That's a single. Double eight, it's just what it says. Double eight has a single cup shape. They bloom late in the spring. Fosteriana is part of these species that we're seeing. They're usually large flowers on shorter stems. They almost have like a water lily, like tulip flower to them. They stay short. Sometimes you see some modeling in the foliage too. Here's some more of the Fosterianas. Another type of species that Greggii is one called redwood. Greggii usually are single, but here we are where we have some doubles now. 6 to 12 inches tall, and they come in variegated flower leaves. You got this little bit of a purple stem in here. And this one looks like it's got 2 flowers per stem. So you can see that purple marking in the leaves. Then lastly is your miscellaneous group. So these are not excluded from the other divisions, but they didn't really have a home in those other divisions. So they've kind of got their own. I love these. This is one species called Clusiana. They open up and they're yellow or white on the inside. And when they close, they're either pink or red on the outside. They get mass. The one plant that I have, I think is next. Yes, Taco. I planted just a handful of bulbs and now it's made a nice clump and I absolutely love the name. My taco craving is starting already, but pink to red outside, bright yellow on the inside. It's reliable. It does so well for us. I love that blue foliage. I have Lady Jane right here at the front door. I even got some more bulbs because Greg Ciener's wife is named Jane, so I wanted her representation in the garden. They're always in the garden, but I like finding those connections with plant names. I got to work on some of the others. And more species, more unusual species. So a friend of mine said there's no such thing as a blue tulip. Well, I see blue in the middle of that, so I'm going with it. These little species here, we have these over in our hillside garden in a rock garden. So that's perfect for some of these because they stay small. They want to be at the edge of the bed. This is called a woodland tulip. So it'd be great in the woodland garden, especially under deciduous trees where it can get some winter sun, excuse me. More species. I like this one with the crinkled foliage, small. So put some of these on your edge of your bed. Shogun's a really good one. We've had lots of that over the years. I'm not too keen on these variegated ones because I feel like the foliage burns in full sun and on the onset of heat. So I try to stay away from the variegated ones. And then Brent and Becky has taught us about lasagna gardens. Oh man, I'm hungry. Got tacos and lasagnas now, but they layer their bulbs. So your big bulbs, your tulips and daffodils are going to go on the bottom. And then typically your muscaris and crocus and your smaller species, daffodils and tulips go on top. So this is what we do. Just pretend this is a garden space. This is exactly how we plant our bulbs in the garden. So we put our deeper bulbs in first, and then we come back and do a layer of the smaller bulbs. So whether it's a pot like this or in the garden, this is how you want to layer them. So soil bulb, soil bulb, soil bulb. Now we don't go 3 layers. We just do 2 layers. We're not that extreme. So just to give you an idea of our gardens, you can see all the dates are a little different here, but these represent peaks. So we've had everything is peak around tax day. And then of course, earlier than that by almost a week. We are probably going to be about where we need to be as far as our season. They're just now starting to come up, but we're going to get cold the next 2 days, 3 days. They'll just slow down. They won't grow. They won't die or anything like that, but they'll be right back at it on Monday. So you guys, if you haven't seen it yet, you have plenty of time. You just learned that there's early, mid, and late species. So the late ones haven't even emerged out of the ground yet. So we just goes to show you how layering the way we do as far as the color is really important to extend your season. We're looking at 6 weeks of a showcase of just spring bulbs alone, and people don't realize that. People just want to come when all the blooms are going, but they miss out on so much more. This was last year. We crawled on top of the brick column, and this is a little bit later in the season because you can see our wisteria is blooming. The leaves have completely leafed, the plants have completely leafed out, and our fringe trees are in full bloom. So this is an example of how early the season was last year. Oh, I was going to take a photo of today, but that's okay. You just have to come and see it for yourselves. And so I've done a lot of shameless plugging for both my garden, our things that we do, our plant sale. Oh, I didn't mention my plant sale. I won't do that. But I'm sure John has signed up for this now, but Brent and Becky has offered an incentive so that when you purchase bulbs from them, you know that part of your portion, 25%, actually gives back to your favorite garden. So when you go to Bloom & Bucks, go to their website or Google Bloom & Bucks, and there's a drop-down menu. And when you hit the drop-down menu, stop at P. You don't need to go any further. Just select Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden as your favorite garden. And we have been getting some of those perks. Several of our friends have now purchased from them, and some of that comes back to us, which goes right back into our bulb garden. So hopefully you could take advantage of that. It doesn't matter if it's tulips and daffodils, you can do your summer bulbs too. And I guess if you wanted to split that order between the 2 gardens, that's fine too. But just know you're supporting a great cause. So hopefully we'll see you out in the gardens. And I don't know if there's any questions, and no, I don't think there's any questions, but tell us about your plant sale. Well, of course I will. Thank you, Janet. So our plant sale is going to be virtually again. So because of the pandemic, we're going to try and eliminate hand-to-hand contact. So what we're going to do is on Monday, so in 4 or 5 days, I am going to post a list of plants online, or it can be emailed too. And you go to that list, you can download it and fill it out and bring it into the garden, or give us a call. And you have about 10 days to place your orders. And when you do, we will gather all those orders and retrieve those plants. And on Friday, the 16th, we will have a virtual, safe, and drive-through pickup. So you'll come into the parking lot. Janet, your last name is Lowe, so you'd be in the L section, kind of in the front middle-ish. You don't even have to get out of your car, just drive up. We will load up for you. You just keep on going. If you wanted to park your car and get out and walk, you can. Right now, we are actually selling some hellebores, but that's on site only. If there's any left during the plant sale, certainly you can order those, but we got some really cool double and single hellebores right now. And so I'm going to put them on a cart and put them at the back of the gift shop doors. So hopefully, if you're not on our email list, go to our website and the list will be up live on Monday.
Do not spend all of your money at that plant sale. I neglected at the beginning to do a few announcements. So if you're still with us, and I think most everyone still is, of course, next week we do have a gentleman from the Triad Orchid Society is going to talk about orchids, but then the next week we have a talk that's the preview of our spring plant sale, and we'll have the plant sale list up at that point. But one key thing to know is if you're a friend of Renolda Gardens, you can actually book your plants ahead of time so you won't miss out on things being sold out. And the actual plant sale, you can pre-book and then continue to shop, which we encourage. So the talk about the sale is on April 13th, and then the spring actual plant sale will be on April 24th. That's a Saturday, and it will be held on the front lawn of Renolda, so we can really spread things out. Plus, we have tons of plants. The greenhouses are really bursting at the seams, so we really encourage, just like Adrienne, this is a key thing in bringing in revenue for our operations. You can go online to become a friend of Renolda Gardens. I'm sure Adrienne set up the same way for Paul J. Ciener Garden. But definitely encourage you to become a friend and support your local gardens. If you have time today, I'd say come by Renolda today before the storms roll through tomorrow, because the cherries they're still looking great. I don't know what they'll look like after wind and storms tomorrow. It's a beautiful day to be outside and enjoy your local garden and support your local garden. So with that being said, unless there's any more questions, or if anyone has any questions, you can always go back, because I did remember to start recording this right at the beginning. Yay me. But we definitely, we love that it's spring. It's a message of hope for all of us right now. Go out and celebrate life in the garden. Adrienne, thank you. I'll cook dinner tonight.
Thanks.
I stopped recording at that now. But thank you as always, and thank everyone for their support of the gardens.
Thank you.
Bye.